You were born with a body that wasn't supposed to be yours alone. Before you had a name, before you had a face, there may have been two of you. And only one of you walked out of the womb. The other one never left. It's still in there, right now. This isn't a horror story. It's basic biology, and it happens far more often than anyone tells you. Scientists estimate that as many as 1 in 8 pregnancies start out as twins. 2 separate embryos, 2 separate heartbeats, 2 separate futures. But by the time most of those pregnancies reach birth, only one baby exists. The other one is simply gone. Doctors call this vanishing twin syndrome. And for decades, nobody thought to ask the obvious question: gone where? The honest answer is unsettling. The missing twin doesn't disappear. It gets absorbed. In the earliest weeks of pregnancy, 2 embryos can develop side by side in the womb, each with its own separate set of DNA. If one embryo stops developing, the body doesn't expel it the way you'd expect. Instead, the surviving embryo, along with the placenta, can reabsorb the tissue of the one that stopped. The cells don't vanish. They get folded into the body that keeps growing, into you. This is where things get strange. Because those absorbed cells don't just disappear into nothing, sometimes they keep living. In 2015, doctors in California were treating a woman named Karen Keegan for a routine kidney issue. As part of the process, they ran a genetic test to find a matching donor among her own family. The results made no sense. According to the DNA, Karen wasn't related to 2 of her 3 biological sons. The math didn't work. She had carried them. She had given birth to them. And yet her blood said otherwise. Doctors eventually traced the cause. Karen's body was a mix of 2 genetically distinct cell lines. Some of her organs carried one set of DNA. Other parts of her body carried a second, different set. Karen had started life as twins. Early in her mother's pregnancy, one embryo had absorbed the other. And the absorbed twin cells never died. They simply became part of Karen, scattered through her body for over 50 years, quietly doing the job of being her without anyone ever knowing they were there. Scientists call this chimerism. The name comes from the chimera, a creature from Greek mythology built from the parts of multiple animals fused into one. And it turns out that myth might be closer to biological reality than anyone wants to admit. Karen's case wasn't an isolated miracle. Once doctors knew what to look for, they started finding chimerism everywhere. Some studies suggest that a noticeable percentage of twin pregnancies result in some form of cellular exchange between the embryos. No symptoms, no way to tell. Unless, like Karen, your own body happens to fail a DNA test in exactly the wrong way. But chimerism isn't only about twins who disappear in the womb. There's a quieter, far more common version of this happening inside almost everyone. It's called microchimerism, and it doesn't require a vanished sibling at all. During any pregnancy, cells can cross the placenta in both directions. A mother's cells slip into her baby. The baby's cells slip into the mother. Researchers have found fetal cells living inside a mother's brain, heart, and other organs decades after birth, long after that child has grown up and moved away. One study found male fetal DNA in the brains of women who had only given birth to sons. Cells that had traveled from a son's body through the placenta into his mother's skull and simply stayed there for the rest of her life. If a woman has been pregnant multiple times, including pregnancies that ended in early miscarriage before she ever knew she was pregnant, traces of those embryos may persist in her body as well. Which means a meaningful number of people are carrying around the genetic material of children, siblings, or unborn pregnancies they never consciously knew existed. Not a rare miracle, a normal, invisible biological exchange happening constantly in nearly everyone that we only discovered because we finally built tools sensitive enough to look. But here's what makes the original twin case even stranger. The absorption isn't always this gentle. Researchers studying vanishing twin syndrome have found that the surviving twin doesn't simply receive a few stray cells. In some documented cases, fragments of the lost twin's body persist for years. Pathologists have occasionally discovered something called a fetus in fetu, a rare condition where an absorbed twin doesn't fully dissolve into cells, but instead becomes lodged inside the surviving sibling's body as an actual, partially formed mass, complete with bone, hair, or even teeth. It usually goes unnoticed for years, sometimes decades, until imaging for an unrelated illness reveals it. Surgeons have removed these in patients who lived their entire childhoods with the physical remnant of a twin curled inside their own abdomen, never knowing it was there. This sounds like the body destroying its twin, but that's not quite the full picture either. Some researchers now believe the relationship runs both ways. The surviving twin doesn't just consume the other. In some cases, the absorbed twin's cells appear to actively integrate into the surviving body's organs, including, in rare instances, the brain, which raises a question neuroscientists still can't fully answer. If part of your nervous system was built using the genetic material of someone who is supposed to be your sibling, is that thought you just had entirely yours? Or did it take two people to build the mind having it? And this isn't just a question for a lab. It has already played out in a courtroom, with a mother's own children on the line. In the early 2000s, a woman in Washington state was applying for government assistance for her 3 children. As part of the process, she and her children were asked to take a routine DNA test to confirm she was their biological mother. The results came back, and according to the lab, she was not related to 2 of the 3 children she had given birth to. Caseworkers suspected fraud. They accused her of carrying someone else's pregnancies, possibly as a surrogate, hiding the arrangement for benefits. She was nearly prosecuted. She was at real risk of losing custody of her own children over a DNA test that said, in black and white, that they weren't hers. It took a court-ordered witness to actually be present for the birth of her 4th child, with DNA samples taken in the delivery room itself, to finally prove what geneticists eventually confirmed. She was a chimera. Somewhere in her own mother's pregnancy, decades earlier, she had absorbed a twin. Her cervix and certain reproductive tissues carried her own DNA, but other parts of her body carried the genetic code of the sister she had absorbed. Genetically, by the strict letter of that first test, her own twin sister was the legal mother of 2 of her children. A sister who never took a single breath outside the womb was, on paper, raising kids she never carried. There's no horror here, even though it sounds like one. This isn't a parasite. It isn't a haunting. It's how a meaningful fraction of all humans are quietly built. 2 lives that started as one shared beginning, with only one set of memories ever forming. Because only one of you ever lived long enough to need them. So the next time you look at an old ultrasound photo, or hear that twins run in your family, or wonder why a DNA test once came back strange, remember this. The version of you that exists right now might not be the only life that started in that womb. It might just be the one that kept going. And somewhere inside you, quietly, permanently, the other one might still be along for the ride.